All right, guys, so here's a full rundown of this pedal board. So this is a Vertex Effects Tour Compact. I had it wired up by Brian Omilion over at the Guitar Sanctuary. If you follow the Chairmen of the Boards podcast, he's one of the chairmen. And he did an absolute magnificent job. Big fan of the podcast. And I knew I needed to have a professional to wire this board up. So I just went ahead and I used his services, so to speak. So what's cool about this pedal board is it has the flexibility to be run a few ways. I can either use 1 amp with it. In that case, I'm just going 4-cable method. I can use 2 amps with it. I can do stereo wet or stereo wet dry, which is your 5-cable method. Or I can use 3 amps with it and do your wet dry wet, which is your 6-cable method. So right now I'm running 5-cable method, stereo wet. I'm not using the dry line. So I'll take you through the signal path really quick so you know what's going on. As far as the amps that I'm using, I only have 2 amps. I plan on eventually getting more, but this is what I have right now. It's the EVH 5150 3 50-watt 2x12 combos. So I have the EO34 and the 606. I use the preamp of the EO34 because it has the cleaner clean channel, and then I use the power amp of the 606. Like that, I can do my stereo setup. So I have the power module and the buffer interface module. Now the reason I needed the power module was because the Funky Vibe has a power cable coming out of it, and then you need power for the power supply there, the DC7. So right now I'm using the DC7 and the 8, the Chox 8, to power everything on the pedal board. And then as you can see, I have a Chox 4. So I have that there for if and when I want to integrate pedals off of the board. So I can add a wah pedal before the input. I can add an active volume pedal before the send. And then I can add some pedals in the Audition loop that I have there, which is right above the Echoplex Preamp. And that box is by American Loopers. So let's go over signal path. So guitar is going to go straight into the input buffer, and then we're going to hit the Polytune 3, followed by the Audition loop, and then we're going to come up to the Funky Vibe, right? From the Funky Vibe, we're going to then come down to the Tube Screamer, and then the Morning Glory, and then we go to the Boss LS2 line selector. Now I have this set to the A+B mix mode, which puts loops A and B in parallel. Loop A, I have the 5150 overdrive, and loop B, I have the big muff. And then after the line selector, we have the Centavo. After the Centavo, we then go to the left mono output buffer, which goes to the front end of the main amp. So that takes care of the signal path going to the front end of the amp. Now we're going to talk about the effects loop. So you're going to go from the effects loop send of the main amp into the send input, which is a passive input. We're then going to go into the Echoplex Preamp, followed by the MXR 10-band EQ. Now the 10-band EQ, what I really like about this pedal is that it allows you to fine-tune your sound, and I can make my wet-dry split. So output 1 is my dry, which goes into a JHS, a little black amp box, and then that goes into the return buffer, which hits the return of the main amp, and then output 2 hits the another JHS little black amp box. As you can see, I have them labeled wet and dry, and then the wet little black amp box is going to come up and hit these 5 pedals in series. And And then, so yeah, so when I do this, I'm going stereo wet dry. Right now, when I go like this, I'm going stereo wet. Now, when I go stereo wet dry, I don't get the quarter note and dotted eighth time for the delays. So I like having it. So I mainly right now I'm using it stereo wet like that. I can get that ping pong type of a thing. So the mono output of the last pedal in the effects loop, which is the reverb, that's going to hit the stereo output buffer of the buffer interface, and that's an isolated out, which also has a polarity switch, and that's going to go to the return of the main amp. And then the stereo output of the Hall of Fame 2, that's going to hit the return of the second amp. Now, if I were to go wet, dry, wet, I would have, you know, the dry output, the dry return would hit the main amp, and then the mono output of the Hall of Fame 2, which is your, you know, the first wet line coming out of the buffer interface, that'll hit the first wet amp, and then the stereo output here will hit the second wet amp, and you get your wet, dry, wet. So anyway, so that's the signal path. So we have, you know, so we go top to bottom. We have reverb, delay, which is the 2290. This reverb, it's the EMT 140, which you can find on the tone print amp in the templates section. So here I'm using 2290. Here I'm using the Echoplex, and then here I'm using the Dreamscape, which is your chorus. Right now I'm using one of the tone prints. It's actually the Paul Gilbert triple caramel apple chorus, which is a tri-chorus. Then we have your tremolo. Then we have your Univibe. What I love about this Univibe, it sounds like the real thing. It is the real thing. I mean, it's not an original, but it's as close as I'm going to get to the real thing. You have your preamp there, and then you have your actual Univibe effect right there. The preamp acts like a boost, adding a little more low end, and then coming down we have your tuner, your tube screamer, Morning Glory, your Big Muff, 5150 overdrive, and your Centavo, which is your clon. I like using the clon for more of a classic rock thing. I got turned on to the clon from Joe Perry, and Aerosmith's my favorite band. So I was a big fan of their live DVD that they released in like '05 or something. It was covering the Honkin' on Bogo tour. And he had one of these. And at the time, I didn't know what it was until years later when this clon obsession started going around. I put one and one together, and I realized, oh, that's a clon on his board. So I figured I might as well get one, you know. Brad and Joe use clons. So we have your 5150 overdrive, which is more of your hard rock sound. Your Big Muff is, you know, your fuzz. Morning Glory, I'm using that more of as a clean boost. It adds more mids. It makes the sound more pronounced. And then your Tube Screamer, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan. You know, like if you want to get that Stevie Ray Vaughan type of sound, you got to have a Tube Screamer. It'll get you there. And I don't really have the overdrive cranked at all. It's more at like 9 o'clock or so. Polytune 3. I'm so used to this tuner. I can't go to any other tuner. And then, so yeah, that's the signal path. Those are the pedals I'm using. So now I'll go into the sound demo. So here we're clean. I'm gonna go, so right now I'm in parallel on the bridge pickup. Hold on, I'm a little bit out of tune. I should have tuned up before. There we go. So here we have the clean sound. And I'm pretty simple when it comes to effects. I mean, there's a bunch of pedals here, but I'm pretty simple. I'm not tap dancing or anything when I use effects. So, you know, you have your regular clean sound, which I don't really use too often unless I want a very pristine clean. A lot of the time I'll have the Funky Vibe preamp on. Add some reverb. If I want more space to the sound, I'll add some reverb. Then we'll go into the delays. So this delay is more for like a rhythmic thing. That type of thing. And then if I want something more ambient, I'll turn on the alter ego, which is your Echoplex. Now I have these three in buffered bypass like that. I have the trails. Same thing with this one. Same thing with Hall of Fame. You can still hear it trail off. Here we go, chorus. Very nice sounding chorus. Then we have your tremolo. Very nice sounding tremolo. We then have, you know, your univibe. If you go to the slower setting, you get more of that that David Gilmour. So let me. More Hendrix. Bring the speed up a little more. play a little Hendrix right now. I'll turn on the tube screamer for fun. So that's the Univibe. Let's just take. So I like leaving the preamp on a lot of the time. So there I had the tube screamer and the Centavo on. I take the tube screamer out. The tube screamer was a little over the top, but it was cool. You know, a nice little boost. So I like using the Centavo mainly with the funky vibe, but I also do like using the tube screamer to boost the front end instead of the funky vibe. I'll show you what, you know, I'll go back and forth like that, you can hear the difference. There's definitely a difference there. The funky vibe is more of it's a clean boost with a little more low end, but your tube screamer, it just has that signature honkiness, that mid honkiness thing. Well, actually, I have the Univibe engaged, but you still have the preamp when you use the Univibe. So let's do without the Univibe effect. Here's the tube screamer with the Centavo. So yeah, that's like one of my favorite rock sounds, is using the Centavo with either the funky vibe or the tube screamer. Just depends what I'm into. Or I can use the Morning Glory. That's another cool sound. So I'll go between the three, like that you can hear the difference. the Funky Vibe adds more low end. This adds, so clean low end, mids, clean mids, and this will add a dirty honkiness. So that's just the signature sound of the Tube Screamer. You know, this Centavo, I love this pedal. It does the classic rock thing. You know. So enough of the Centavo. Let's go to the 5150 Overdrive. With the 5150 Overdrive, you don't really need to use anything with it. At least I don't. It sounds good just the way it is on its own. So here's I'm gonna go bridge pickup in series. And we'll go 5150 Overdrive. Basically your hard rock sound. I went into some Rage Against the Machine there, but yeah, your hard rock sound. Then you have your fuzz. I like the fuzz with the Hall of Fame too. And then we have, Morning Glory. So I went, I'm on clean right now. I'll go parallel in the bridge pickup. Basically a clean boost with just, it accentuates more of the mids. It takes you really close to that edge of breakup sound. I want to push it a little further, I can add the Funky Vibe. And if I want full breakup, I can add just the Tube Screamer. And then we have the Tube Screamer, which is, your Stevie Ray Vaughan thing. You just got to add that vibrato. I like adding the Funky Vibe to the Tube Screamer. Kind of makes it more full sounding. And then obviously the Univibe. I'll turn the reverb on. Well, that pretty much covers everything. I'm pretty simple the way I use this board. If you guys have any questions or you want to see a combination of the effects, just feel free to leave it in the comments. Like this video, subscribe. I'm gonna add more videos. So stay tuned.